Alright, so these guys, just like you guys in the last game, in the diamond game, have a late rotation. So there's 1 minute left, they're all the way on the outside of zone and they have to push into artillery. This is obviously not ideal because at Predator, the artillery final circle is one that's, you know, figured out very early, and people will be holding up on these walls and they'll be holding the big buildings at least, and probably the barracks or the tunnel as well, gatekeeping it. So you don't want to rotate late. As soon as you see that first circle drop and your team anticipates that it's going to be in the artillery area, doesn't matter if you're an active or like an aggressive or a passive team, you want to get there early. If you're a passive team, you take one of the buildings early, you know, like we talked about before, be the first team to rotate. If you're an aggressive team, then you just gatekeep the artillery area for the rest of the game. But either way, you won't have to rotate in late and you can't get sandwiched. And here, I think I started it a couple seconds too late, so we're going to go back 15 seconds. They scouted an enemy team right next to them in the house on the left. Come on, did I go Did I go back far enough? I did not. Because that's something here. That's something we need to see before we continue. So there is one team that was holding this house that is starting to rotate over towards the right here. They scout that out. They decide not to take a fight. They're out in the open area here, which is not ideal, obviously. And they're discussing how they're going to rotate into artillery. They call out that the building in front of the wall might be empty that they're pinging here, but before they actually leave, while this guy is healing up, they mention, no, there is a team there. Now, first of all, with this team on your left, if you have a longbow and an R301, you should never be holding this open area. There's no point. You have a caustic holding the high ground there with his straps. There's no reason for you not to be up there with him unless the enemy team has a Kraber or more than one longbow. Other than that, you should always be up there as well, because it's just a stronger position. And then this team decides to rotate in early, but they know there's a team behind. They know that this house is contested. There's Watson fences up here. So there's a team up here, and they know that there's a team rotating on their left, right? So this is obviously the perfect example of what we were talking about earlier with wanting to be the first or the last team to rotate out. If you go and push this team, you're forced to fight on the right side of the map to break line of sight from the team above, so that you're sandwiching this team. So you can't flank around because you'll get melted by these guys above. You won't really be able to use your longbow here, and then while this fight is going on, unless you completely and instantly overwhelm this team without taking any damage, it's up to this team behind you that's also rotating in to decide if they want to third party you, and then it's up to the team up top as well to decide if they then want to drop on you. So from all directions, this is risky and the engage is not in your hands. So you shouldn't be doing this. If you can't be the first to rotate in, well then you're going to have to be last. You know that there's people here, and you still decide to run out in the open and poke when you're in line of sight from this team, and potentially from the team next to you because you didn't actually look at where they went. So this is not ideal. Move from cover to cover here. And the last thing to point out here is that when you are in ranked, you all have a role. Oh my god, why did he fire? Well, they did call out to focus fire this person, which is good, but he should have done so from cover, because if he gets melted here and he has to heal behind this rock, well then this team is going to destroy him, right? So that your health is too valuable of a resource here. They did call out to focus this guy together, which is good. But if you're all three rotating in Predator, right, where a lot of teams rotate early and your rotation can get contested or cut off, everybody has a role. The front guy, his role is the path. He decides where you guys are going and you guys are following him, right? Your role, because you are farthest back, is scouting. It's your job right now to ensure that while you guys are running around, there's no team that engages upon you when you're out in the open. Because if they do, you'll get murdered. So it's the person that's farthest back can just mindlessly follow his teammates without thinking about where he's running and look around and scout for people chasing you or looking for an opportunity to third party. So that's what you should have been doing, and while you're running towards this building, even though you know there's a team on your left, you look at it a little bit, but then you just kind of, from this moment onwards, you're going to forget about them, stand out in the open where I can be shot by 3 teams, and I challenge this guy anyway. Now, there's a call to push in because you guys do more damage. You're again out in the open. The pathing here is dangerous. And again, pathing is your caustic's job here. If you followed him, you would have literally had cover and you wouldn't have been stacked up with him because you're far enough behind. So you would have been safe and you could have done the scouting, or you could have covered for him, or you could have thrown a nade to cover his entrance. So there's no point for you to take a different route out in the open there. Alright, now we see a little bit of scouting to the left, which is good. It's too late, but it's there, which is good. You guys end up pushing this team and holding the house. I think you end up pushing most of them out, which is nice. Alright, so you guys made it to the house safely, but your rotation was contested, and when your rotation is contested, your first priority is cover, and then your second priority is how do you fix your rotation. Because if there's teams behind you, you don't want to get sandwiched. Alright, and now we can see what we were talking about earlier. He's forced to fight at one side of the house. He cannot push to the other side of the house where his teammates are fighting because there's the team up top that's contesting them, right? So as soon as he gets lasered here or pushes forward, he's screwed. Now your teammates have this front side covered. They're both there and they're making calls on the enemy's team. So again, your job, scouting. You're at the backside of this building for the entirety of this fight, and you don't once look at where people might be behind you. Are people on the other side of the wall? Are people rotating in still? Are people trying to flank around? Are people coming through the wall? Those are all possibilities and you're not looking at any of them. And also you could have used this distraction to either deploy your grapple to a better situation, or a better position. Maybe get your zipline ready for an attack, you know, on a flank. But other than that, decent holding the house, but not enough situational awareness. Definitely need to be scouting more around you. So we're gonna skip ahead a bit. Here, he finally ends up spotting an enemy because, and this, I felt bad about this when reviewing the vault for the first time because I mentioned he wasn't scouting enough. And then the one moment that he looks after this fight, like he wasn't looking the entire time, he sees a solo rotate out. Like, how lucky is that? He understood though, it's all good. Alright, so he ends up seeing a solo, a zone comes in, and now you're in this awkward situation once again. A rotation is going to come up to this new circle. Are you going to be the first one to get there? Well, that's difficult because you're already late on the rotation, so there's already people around you blocking you in. Or are you going to be the last one? And that's also going to suck because you're right on the edge of zone. So, in my opinion, here your focus should be relocating. You either push the team off high ground or relocate through the wall. And make sure that you can actually make that rotation safely. Alright, finally using the longbow here, which is good. Need to try and get some value out of this loadout, otherwise you should have been carrying a close range weapon. No need for you to be peeking the door rather than the back of the house here. You're all three stacked up, which is not good. But a good knock right there to open up the engage. And right here, something very nice for you guys to point out is that, I'll put it back a bit so you guys can hear it. There's a call from the team not to be too aggressive, because his teammates have to wait for the grenade.
Headshot down. We can go. We can go. We can go. Oh, be careful. I know. Do you wanna go? You wanna go? Let's go.
We're going.
Saw that? How he jumped backwards on the zipline to delay his timing so that his teammates could keep up.
We can go. Oh, be careful. I know.
And this makes such a huge difference when they're pushing a team in Predator. Team play, communication, like I was pointing out in the Diamond Vault, and this is why I'm pointing it out. These comms are great. Exactly. That's why I wanted you guys to hear this. This is like, you have to learn if you want to play at this rank that regardless of what you're doing, what you're thinking, or how hard you think you can win this fight, if your teammate makes the call to reset, you reset. You have to learn that if you want to play at that level. And that's what this guy is doing very well, as are his teammates throughout this vault. Something I pointed out the first time as well. It's very good. Alright, they have a knock here. The Wraith is still knocked on the enemy team. However, in the time that they were delayed here, it's very reasonable that this enemy team could have rezzed her already. People res very fast in ranked. Right now, pop, rest, right? So when you're going up here, expect a 3v3, even if you might be low health. Because of that, because you're approaching high ground, you're contesting a team that's already defending this, and they have watched the trap set up, and you don't know what else they have in store for you up here. You have to make sure that you instantly get into a good position. What I would do, because your Wraith is this close, is I would jump off right here and climb up on the right side. So I've got this little piece of cover, and the Wraith and I are shooting from two different angles. If you're going up here, then when you jump off, the first thing you would do is try and get behind this Watson ulti that she puts up. As soon as she puts it up, stop shooting, get behind it right now. And that's what he does. He blocks off the sideline from the Watson. He doesn't actually look left anymore, so he ends up getting in sideline with her again, but she shoots his teammate, so he ends up getting away with it. Here, one small mistake that I wanted to point out. We'll listen to the comms for a second again. Oh, actually, before we do that, notice how he calls out the Pathfinder as a target.
Focus path.
Even if the target is wrong, you'll be so much better off focusing the same wrong target than all shooting somebody else, right? Focus fire is extremely important or extremely powerful in Apex. So these are incredibly good calls. He calls it more than once, so even in the action you can still figure out what's going on, because if somebody just says like focus path once, well, a lot of stuff is being yelled, it's easy to miss. It's good to repeat, it's good to be clear, keep it short, focus path, and it works. The focus pathfinder, and he dies, and then they can focus. So very good calls. But here comes the call to watch out for the third party, because they scouted somebody below, right?
Watch the third, watch the third, watch the third.
Watch the third. Now, he doesn't mean the third teammate, he says it a bit oddly, but he means watch out for the third party, because there's somebody below and there's a zipline right here. And because of that, the fact that he shoots these pylons here is a mistake. He shouldn't have done this. When they scouted this top area, they noticed this zipline on the side, and they have a zipline that they put up from the house where they were at. These are the two angles of approach from the person that they're trying to avoid getting third party by. They haven't scouted the other side at all, so they're not even sure of that. But if this person pushes, these Watson fences are in your advantage, because they're blocking the zipline. They're not in your way whatsoever, they don't block anything. You can get to the right of them, you can peek, you can shoot through them. You can use them, there's nothing bad about them. So just like the Watson ulti, which they leave standing because it's useful to them up there, you should leave these pylons. Leave them standing, so that it's actually harder for these people to third party. Other than that though, they did very well. The focus fire was good, the approach was not ideal, but they pushed on a knock, which was nice. They were fast, they did it together, so far so good. They end up getting spammed from below here, and let me skip forward to see where the next rotation is. Alright, so the next zone is here up ahead of them. They have their backside cleared, which is very nice, or at least the people that they saw, because keep in mind, one of my largest criticisms of this VOD is the lack of scouting, so I would say it's very likely there's a team behind them still hiding in the bushes that they're not aware of. It wouldn't surprise me in the slightest, because this is Predator, there's 13 people alive in this circle, right? So that's gonna happen. Okay, so they scout a team in the middle, and he ends up taking a couple longbow shots here. I don't think he's getting any value out of his longbow here. He's not playing the top enough, and he's not going for yoinking kills. He's not looking at armors. He's not actually using this to his value. So it's a bit of a shame. He's trying to get a couple shots in here and there when he can to poke, but he's not actually like trying to force value plays, which you should do if you have a double ranged loadout. Right. But then what I wanted to point out is their caustic dropped early to put down barrels, right? They don't know if these barracks are taken, and they don't know where the other teams are hiding. They just know about these two teams here. And there's two more teams that they don't know about. Your caustic is the one that has the most trouble getting around safely, because you're path and you have a wraith. So right here, if you want the caustic to drop down early to drop barrels, then use a wraith portal. A zipline is your second best option. But don't send him out in the open by yourself if you haven't properly scouted behind you, because it's a suicide mission. He should have gotten punished for this. Luckily he didn't, because the only team that ends up being behind them doesn't decide to engage on this, but that's their mistake. And right here, he gets a call that there's a team underneath. Like I said, they hadn't scouted enough, which is why they didn't know this team was behind them the entire time. Could have third-partied them this entire time. That's why I was harping on the scouting. And you notice that they're underneath you. You drop down. What do you decide to do? Put your grapple, which is a long cooldown, a 12-second cooldown if you don't have a gold helmet. Put it on a 12-second cooldown for what? To stand out in the open with a longbow and expose yourself to the team behind. Right, so this position is terrible and should never have happened at this rank. You should have either gone up to the generators, where you can properly block line of sight from one of the teams, should have gone to the top, should have shot them from above, should have naded first before he had gone. Any of those, slingshotted himself, any of that would have been fine, but not out in the open on the ramp while exposing yourself to the other team. That's not good. Alright, nice grapple there by the way, through zone, no fear, 1 HP, he doesn't. Okay, so they have a team holding the door, and right here, so you know the zone is up ahead of you and it's out in the open, right? So this is a very difficult zone to push early because there's no strong location to hold early. Because of that, you're gonna want to rotate last, so is every good Predator team. This is going to be an end circle mayhem, you just know it. So what you want to do is get damage in right before the circle stops closing, or get a knock right now that you can finish with nades if they don't have a Watson ulti. Because of that, you want to hold this roof. You've got a longbow, you've got an R3, and now is when you have to hit your clutch shots for either an engage or to force them into a bad position, or to force them to get in the zone with damage taken, to have one of the other teams engage on them, something. But you want to hold this top. You want to hold this high ground. You don't want that team below you to be able to engage on you inside, because you don't have a Watson ultimate, so you can just get the nade spam to death. And sadly, that's what they end up doing. They end up pushing bottom here, and they later up even end up stacking up on the same corner. Now, if I was one of those enemies and I saw this, my very first call here obviously would be, they don't have a Watson, just throw your nades, right? At this point in the game, at Predator, everybody has 8 grenades, and they're waiting for the one team that doesn't have a Watson. And if you then stand on low ground in a building with no doorways, or at least, you know, these open doorways on the sides, like the barracks, in a corner together, you're gonna end up having all the nades flood at you, and you will die. So that's not ideal. Right, here, this scouting could have been done from the top of the barracks, where you should have been. Like I said, you would have had the same visibility, but you would have been safer. Could have popped some caustic traps down there as well, so it's near impossible to push you, and if you need to heal, you have some gas, and then you can always still drop down below. Dropping down is a lot easier than climbing up, unless you're Pathfinder, which he is. And I'm right here. His teammate ends up getting engaged with the team here on the right. Now he scouted two teams on the fence here that were fighting, and one of them rotated over to the left, or it's another team, I'm actually not quite sure, but either way, on the left side on that truck there's a team holding. So right here, running out in the open, this is risky, I wouldn't do it. I would go behind this truck immediately and then go up or grapple up to the top of the barracks, so that you have a line of sight not only to shoot the enemies that your teammate are shooting, so that you can shoot down from here. You also have cover from all the teams on your left. And if your teammate is in trouble and gets lasered and needs to go inside to heal, you can cover for him. And you're not right there where you can be pushed off or chased or bullied away or just naded. In this case you get mass naded with the ultimate, and they're throwing nades as well. So this push is bad, should have taken high ground here, you're overexposed. And then right here, when he gets slowed, look, I end up stacking up in the corner when they can get naded. So they should, like, they knew the enemies were here, they were holding this door before, so there's no excuse for defaulting to low ground here with all three of you, and there's no excuse for stacking up if you don't have a Watson. Not at this rank anyway. Luckily your teammate is a Mastiff, so it doesn't matter, but, you know, still. Right, and then here, this is actually funny because we were talking about this in the very first VOD. If you're gonna hold on top here, then don't hold on the bars, but hold on the actual ball. You'll be exposed more, like this guy. Look, he's very exposed, but you actually have freedom of movement. And we can actually see that he's making a small mistake as well. He's not holding on the ball, where he can instantly strafe to break line of sight. He's actually standing on this pipe on top of it, which is why he's higher up, which is why he can't instantly drop down. But it's better than standing on the edge where he'll fall down, so that's an improvement. Right, and then of course the rotation is late, so they're going to wait for the last second to be pushed out of the zone here, which is good, it's the only thing you can do. With one team left, and here, if you were holding this high ground, you couldn't have gotten lasered in. And this is just being punished for a bad position. Remember what I said 1.5 minutes ago, when this zone came in? I said the only thing that matters this fight, assuming you stay alive, is that right before the zone starts moving, which is 1 second from now, you deal damage to the enemy team. Because that's what will help you win the mayhem at the end, that initial damage that they can't heal because the zone is coming. And that's exactly what this bad position allows them to do to you. The zone is coming in 1 second, bam! And that's when they push in and laser you, because that's when they know they need to build the advantage on you. The previous minute doesn't matter as long as they stay alive. This fight is what matters. And you end up going down for it. You take way too much damage here. Now they do get lasered by your teammates, they're 2v3. And that Wraith messed up her slide jump a little bit. Should have peeked that better, because she could have killed both of you. But either way, you end up getting down, and this is a risk you should not have taken. If you had been holding the high ground properly there, this would have never been an issue, and if you had scouted properly, it would not have been an issue either. Other than that, from here on, there's just one guy left that's holding the ball, so your team should split up here around him. End up pushing from the same side, but it's still 2v1, and one of them has a Mastiff, so they'll end up killing him. And that's GG. Look, boom, GG. Alright. So there you go. You can definitely see the differences between a Predator ranked VOD here and the Diamond VOD from before. I would definitely point out, if you're struggling to get above Plat or Diamond, try to really work on your focus fire with your team, and try to really work on making a plan. Whenever you're in doubt, just say out loud whatever you can think of that's important right now. What's happening with the zone? What's happening with the enemies? What's happening with our gear? Do we need loot? Do we need to get to zone? Do we need to get, you know, for placement? What do we need? Do we need to rotate? And just make a plan and try to follow that. You'll get better over time. And try to look for common mistakes like bad rotations like this, because you will end up getting punished.